Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Sarjun. I'm a data science trainer, a lecturer, and an industry practitioner in this field and a mentor to the youth. This is the fifth in the series of basic R programming course. Before we start, I would like to reach out to you to follow me on my socials, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Send me a message and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Yeah. With that said, let's dive to today's session. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at flow control. This is a very interesting lecture. Okay, so flow control. So what is flow control? A program has a flow, and the flow is the order in which the program codes are executed. And the flow control of the R program is controlled by the following aspects: conditional statements, loops, function calls. So for flow control 1, which is today's session, we're going to be looking at conditional statements. So what are conditional statements? We're going to be looking at if statements. I think I'm sure if you've used Excel, you would have used like the if option inside Excel. So you have if statements. We're going to be looking at if else statements and use of nested if else statements. Okay. So if statement. The if statement is used in R for decision making. The if keyword is followed by an indented block of code. The block of code will only be activated and executed if the condition before the if statement is true, right? So let me run this code because I don't want to get warnings, as I mentioned. Okay, and then let's see an example. So check if a number is greater than 0. Okay, so when you're doing if statements, you must understand about this curly braces format. So let me just assign a num variable equals to 8. So the number is 8. Okay, and then you have to use an if statement to assess if the variable num is more than 0. Then display the variable num output as num is greater than 0 if it is true, right? Then display the statement. This is the final print statement. This way of coding, even though it works properly, it is not properly indented for better code review process. So let's just show you what is the wrong way of doing it before we do the right way of doing things. Okay, so let's try this first. Okay, so I put an if statement, I put a bracket num more than 0, right? Let me just put some spaces here just for indentation purposes. Okay, and then I open up this curly braces. So this is what the if statement looks like. So cat. So you can see, okay, I'm intentionally doing it wrong. Okay, even though it works, it's not ideal to do it this way, right? Is greater than 0, right? And then end equals to /n. It's quite standard, right? And then I type cat. This is the final print statement, right? Simple. End is equals to n. Let me run this. It works, but this is not proper, right? So what is proper? Let me explain to you what is proper. This is, even though this works, it's not proper and not good. It's not pleasant for the eye to see, right? So we want to, I'll copy the same thing and I'll correct this, right? What's the proper way of doing it? It's always have a good practice of indentation. So in this case, because this is the code if, and this line will only execute if this is true. If this is not true, then this line won't execute. So you can see the clear flow if you indent it well, right? I use tab, right? You can also use, instead of using, you can use 1, 2, 3, 4. So obviously they say, using 4 spaces is the more ideal way of doing it, right? So that's one tab, right? When I run this, it works. So 8 is greater than 0. This is the final print statement, right? Okay, now, what if I assign the number variable equals to -1? So this time is -1, right? I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste this, right? Now I'm going to run it. You can see because my number here is definitely not more than 0, it's a negative 1, you can see automatically that the num is greater than 0, that line is not printed, right? It skips that value, it doesn't go inside this if condition, it goes here, it evaluates, it doesn't go in, it just comes out, right? So it's that's how it works. That's how the if statement works. Okay, simple. Time to do a quick practice question, right? You're asked to request user to input his cash in wallet as a cash variable using readline function. Assign a variable cash with input for cash amount available. If user has more than $0, display hooray, today there's lunch. Okay, try it out, pause the video, try it out, and yeah, then we will check later. Okay, so cash as dot numeric with a read line, again with the prompt, and the prompt say enter your cash amount. Simple, right? So basically, if brackets, I always use brackets, it's good practice, right? Curly braces. So you only need to do it if hooray, today there is lunch. Simple, right? And then you run. Let's put in the value 35. Hooray, today is lunch, right? Let's try it out and just put 0. There's no lunch. I mean, at least that the line doesn't get activated, right? So 35, and it works. Okay, moving on. Okay, we did a very simple if statement. But what if it's not just an if statement? What if there's an else statement? So let's look at what we call the if-else statement. The if-else statement evaluates an expression and executes them according to the evaluation. The intended if block of code, provided if condition evaluates to true, will get executed. If not, the intended else block of code will execute if the if condition evaluates to false. So whenever there's if-else, either one will get executed as long as you have an if-else. So if you have an if it doesn't execute an if, you'll execute an else. That's how it works, the if-else. On the other hand, the if-else, if, and else evaluates multiple expressions, and they evaluate sequentially. So the intended if block of code, provided the if condition evaluates to true, that will activate. If not, the next else if, or otherwise it will be the else if condition block of code will activate, provided the if that block of if condition evaluates to false. Sorry, the earlier if condition evaluates to false, and the else if condition evaluates to true, and so on and so forth. So you can have multiple else if, else if, else if, else if, else if, at the end, else. Right? You can have multiple of those. Right? But for simplicity, let's start off with the simple if else to show you what it means. Let's create a number that is equals to 8. Right? Num assigned to 8. Now we're going to create if num is more than 0. Our first if else statement. So cat num, comma, is greater than 0, right? END equals to /n. Now, else, so this is how you create another else statement. Cat num is lesser than 0, right? There's a small issue with this code in terms of accuracy. I'll explain to you what the problem is, right? Which is why you need to use else, if else, and so on and so forth, right? Okay, so and then cat, this is the final print statement. D equals to simple, right? When I run this, we know 8 is greater than 0, and this is the final print statement, right? Okay, what's the problem? If my answer is 0, 0 is less than 0, this is where the problem is. This is why I say this is not a very good, not very well coded question in a sense, because there's one part that's missing, which is 0. What if the value is 0? 0 is not greater than 0, 0 is not less than 0, 0 is equal to 0, right? So that is Yeah, so that's something you need to factor in, right? So in this case, we are looking at greater and less than. So sorry, in this case, we're looking at greater and less than. So we will just take it as it is, just for learning purpose. But do keep this in mind, right? Okay, so similarly, we can set num is equals to -1, right? And then we can copy the same code here because I'm just testing whether what happens if it's -1, and I'm going to run this code. So it should work. Earlier it was 8, now it's -1. Again, -1 is less than 0. This is the final print statement. So it works, right? All good, right? Now, what if we have a much more complicated situation, like there's a 0, right? And we want to factor that in as well, right? So let's try this with a more challenging example. Let's say age, and we have age that is categorized by different values. If the age of this person is from 0 to 3 years old, then there's no fares. If the age is between 3 but less than 10, 50 cents. If it's between 10 but less than 20, $1. If it is anything else, $2. So that's how we do our testing, right? So let's do age as dot numeric. This is the input. Read line, prompt, prompt, enter your age. Please enter your age here, right? Okay, so now that is done, let's try this as well. So if the value is between two parts, so we can say age is more than or equals to, let me make it more aesthetically pleasing to see, equals to 0, okay, and so age is less than 3 because it's still 3 lah, right? So 3 is not included, right? We cat no fares for age group 0 to 3 years old. Simple, right? Okay. Now we're going to do a else. Okay, this is different. This else if. So else if, you need to pass in a condition as well. So it needs to be age more than equals to 3. And remember the and sign. And age less than 10. Okay. Now you can do a cat bus fare is 50 cents, right? Now we can do another else if. Here, before we do that, we need to pass in the condition, which is age, age more than equals to 10, aesthetically, and age, brackets, age less than 20. I just realized my bracket is missing. Oh, sorry, my space is missing here. Okay, just to be aesthetically, easier to see, nicer, right? Cat bus fare is $2, right? $2. Sorry, $1. Jumping the gun. $1. Now, finally, else. That's it. So we do the cat bus fare is $2. Oops, my cat. Okay, notice I don't put the /n, right? Because this is not sequence. This is not like equals to the n. I never put /n because it's not like they are going to be printed one after the other. It's only one of these gets printed. So to me, it's okay, right? So let's run this. Let's say 2 years old, no fares for this age group. Let's try everything. Let's try 5 years old. Bus fare is 50 cents. let's try 14 years old. Bus fare is $1. And let's try 26 years old. Bus fare is $2. So all works. The trick to this is if the value is a negative value, then it will also be $2. But then again, it's kind of like out of the focus area. So unless you say if it's a negative area in negative value, you can either ask the user to input it again and again and again until he gets. So that's a different loop condition that we will look at later on. Okay, quick practice. Oops, I think I jumped too far. Okay, quick practice. Request user to input cash in the wallet using a cash variable using readline function. Assign a variable cash with input to enter cash available. If user has $5 to $10, print eat at hawker. If user has $10 to $20, print eat at shop house. And user has more than $20, print eat at restaurant. Right. I know here there's a trick. I never count from 0 to 10, but just for the sake of coding and learning, we will do this. Okay, try it out, and I'll go through with you. So pause it, and I'll go through just after this. Okay. Okay, let's tackle this question. So, first thing, you have to ask for an input. I think this one you should be quite used to this as numeric, readline, prompt, right? Quite enter your cash amount here. Okay, that's the first one, right? If your cash value is more than 20, so I'm going to do a bit of a reverse engineering, right? Cat eat at restaurant, right? Else, if cash is more than 10, so it's kind of like a reverse way of doing it. I take from the lowest. You can do cat eat at shop house, and then you can do else cat eat at AWKER. So you just give value 26, eat a restaurant. Let me run this again. 16, eat at shop house. And 6, eat at hawker. Hawker is like a coffee shop kind of thing. Okay, so nested if-else statements. So now we're going to be looking at what if we have if-else statements within if-else statements. So when can we apply them, and when do those questions apply? Let's try. Okay, so basically, let me show you. The use of nesting is used if there's an if statement within another if statement. The outer if condition must be met in order for the program to execute the inner if condition. So it's like multiple if conditions leading to multiple things. So later we'll do a good example, but let's start off with a simple example. Let's assign 3 variables, num1 with the value 10, num2 with the value 34, and num3 with the value 5. Now we're going to assess which number is the greatest, right? And I know this is not the best way to do it, but this is one way you can do it. If num1 is more than num2. So if this is true, you want to check if num1 is greater than num3. So you already know that if this happens, you have a clear situation where you know that num1 is greater, because in both cases, num1 wins, right? Now, else, since we know that num1, this else will only be executed if if num2 is greater, right? So if num2 is greater than num1, we know already in this else statement, right? We know that this will only happen if and only if num1 is smaller than num2. That's all, right? Now we're in the else statement, right? Num1 is smaller than num2. Now it's the comparison between num2 and num3 that's bigger, confirmed. So num2 is definitely bigger than num1. Now we're going to compare num2 and num3. So we do another if. If num3, num3 is greater than num2, right? We already know cat, because num3 is greater, right? So this is as simple as that. So there's an else here, and this else just means cat num2 is greater. So in this case, we already know it has to go into all this. So basically, it will miss the first one. It will miss this because we already know num2 is the greatest. So this it will all fail here. It will go into this else loop, and then here it will check whether num3 is greater than num2. Also, it will also fail this. It will go inside here, and it will print cat this one out. So let's try it out. Yes, 34 is greater. So we know, right? And there's no, it's not any secret. That is what it is. Okay. Okay, when to use a if else statement, right? We need to use a if else statement when we have certain reasons for or certain needs. Like, so let me give you an example. In Singapore, there's a mandatory national service for all males above 18 years old of age deemed physically fit. So the if else statement will be to filter out those who fit this criteria. So the program will check if the age is more than or equals to 18, the gender is male, and if the health is fit for NS requirements. So we need to assign 3 variables: age, gender, and health, right? If all requirements are met, we will say you cannot escape NS. You have to do it, right? If user is not fit, you have to print you're not fit for NS. If the user is not a male, you're not required to serve NS. And if the user is below 18, you're too young. Okay, that's basically what the requirement is. So how do we go about doing it? So let's start off with assigning the variables. Here, I'm not asking for a read inline input. Okay, I'll just straight away go in and type to make it easier, right? You can use read inline input if you want to, if you're comfortable with that. So you can, it's like a program. You can keep writing and inputting values. Okay, so how do we? I'm more focused on how do we key in these values. So let's start out with age. So if age is more than equals to 18, right? And then we have this, right? And then I'm going to create a else statement here immediately. Else, okay? So within this, I'm going to type, okay? So this is my first else statement. So so I know if the age is not more than equals to 18, I'm going to print you are too young, right? So this is the way I'm going to handle it, right? Now, here, right, I need to look at the next filter. So it's going to be if gender is equals to male, right? Am I right? And I'm going to do immediately a quick else here. And in this case, I'm going to cat you. If the person is not a male, you're not required to serve an S, right? Again, I need to go in here to this tab. I need to use if health equals to fit. Again, I'm going to put in here. Okay, before I put in the cat, I want to do an immediate else. So this is where I'll say you're not fit for NS, right? Because the person is not fit. So you are not fit for NS, right? And then I go back to this one. This is where the person has to serve NS. So you have, or you cannot escape NS, or you have to serve NS. Depends on how you want to put it, right? Now, so the person, so here is 18. It's fit, the male fit. So you should say you have to serve NS. What if the value of the gender is female? You're not required to serve NS. What if the person is unfit. You're not fit for NS. So everything works, right? What if the person is very young? So let's say 10 years old. You're too young. So all these factors are taken care of automatically. See, if I change my values, the output is it follows as well, right? So in this case, it works. Okay, what if your criteria keeps changing, right? In the real world, if your criteria keeps changing, this is where you need to keep your data in a SQL or a MongoDB database to store the details, and the details are fetched by an API call. So you need to ensure, like, today is 18, tomorrow is, 21, depending on how. So you need to have make it dynamic, right? So the use of if-else statement is so frequent, even when you log into your social media account, the back end is actually checking for the username matches your password input, right? So the reality is it's widely used by us, but we are actually not aware of these mechanics, right? That goes behind the scene. Okay, quick practice. Request user to input user ID and password as separate input values. Assign a variable user ID with input for user ID using readline function. Assign a variable password with input for password using readline function. The program to check password for user ID of DSPY and password of ABC123 for login purpose. Okay, these are very lousy passwords. You shouldn't be using this. Okay, if the user ID and password are correct, to print password accepted, logged in. If the user ID is correct but password is wrong, print wrong password, please enter correct password. And if user ID is incorrect, to print wrong user ID, please enter correct user ID. Pause the video and try it out, and we will discuss after this. Okay, let's tackle this. So user ID, again, you need to have two readline prompts. Readline prompt as requested, enter user ID. Okay, and then password, readline prompt, enter password. Simple, right? Okay, if user ID, must follow, okay? If user ID equals to ds_py, now if, okay, so let me do the else first before I do anything else, right? Else, so if user ID is not equal to this, we have to type in print wrong user ID, please enter correct user ID. So simple, right? Now, let me backspace this. Okay, so here. Now, if the next check is for password equals to ABC123, right? Again, let me do the else first. Else is going to be print wrong password, please enter correct password. Simple, right? And this is the correct one, right? This is where we print password accepted, okay, logged in. Simple. That's all. Okay, let's try. So we know that we're looking for the password is ds_py. So let's do the correct one. ds_py and ABC123. Password accepted, logged in, so that works. Now let's say we pass in the wrong user ID, ds_ds, which is the wrong user ID, and password is ABC123. Wrong user ID, please enter correct user ID. Now let's enter the correct user ID, ds_py, and let's try the password as XYZ123. Wrong password, please enter correct password. Sorry, please enter, yeah, wrong password, please enter correct password. Okay. So it's all there. It all works. Okay. So I hope this session helps. Yep. So that's about it. I'll see you in the next segment. Thank you so much.